Thank you, sir. We're going to get that taken care of, yeah. And then we got all of those if you want to come tomorrow or whatever. We just need one more signature, so if Jerry comes in, you don't have to sign, but you can.
I didn't know.
You can do them right now if you want.
I'll wait till.
Okay, yeah, you can do them tonight. Yeah. Oh, she left it unlocked. Good thing you had your key.
I'd like to call this meeting, the Clay County Commission, to order. We will begin with our invocation. Mr. Administrator, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Pray with me. Father, we're grateful for your presence in our lives, and we're grateful for your presence at this gathering right now. We ask, Father, for patience, for tolerance, for discernment and deliberation. We ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
That brings us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to the approval of the agenda as published?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Motion has been made for the approval of the agenda as published. Are there any additions, deletions, or any other alterations?
Not for me.
No discussion? You are free to close, Commissioner.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to meeting schedule. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, the next regularly scheduled commission meeting will be a work session that takes place on Thursday, July the 8th at 10 a.m.
By the way, Mr. Administrator, would you go ahead and acknowledge the days that the offices will be closed for those listings so that we don't have anybody accidentally show up on the days when we are closed, if you have that information?
Sure, there's no scheduled meeting on July the 1st, and there will be the county offices will be closed on Monday, July the 5th.
Thank you very much. Brings us to meeting schedule. Mr. Administrator? I'm sorry, you just said that, didn't you?
I think I did that.
I did not check that one off. I was a little behind the curve.
We can jump in the Wayback Machine and
True. Honorary resolutions are unlisted tonight. Discussion items, there are none. Public hearings, there are no public hearings listed this evening. That brings us to number 10, consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion related to the consent agenda, I would remind all commissioners that any commissioner may in fact remove any item from the consent agenda to be put upon our regular agenda. With that, is there a motion related to our consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Motion's been made for the approval of the consent agenda. Discussion? Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Any comment from the public? Seeing none. By the way, the consent agenda consists of items that have been heard once and were believed to be non-controversial and did not involve the spending of county funds. With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
And Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda tonight is 2021-154. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, Resolution 2021-154 is to approve revised contracts for the collection of taxes for cities within Clay County by the collector, specifically the city of Lawson, the city of Avondale, and the city of Missouri City. And I don't believe there's anybody here from the collector's office to make any comments.
Okay. Is there a motion, well, I guess, is there a motion related to 2021-154?
I move that we approve 2021-154.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2021-154. Discussion? Commissioner Thompson, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. And this is, there'll be a series of these, obviously. This is just one of them. We are doing this for all of our municipalities, of course. With that, Commissioner Carpenter, you are free to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2021-163. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, I apologize, it's 2021-163?
Yes,
Okay,
I was
excuse me,
hoping I
that's
said
my
that.
mistake. 2021-163 is to approve the payment to Operation Safe for salaries, benefits, services, and supplies. It's an amended resolution which added the words "not to exceed" in the previously submitted language.
Okay. Are there any questions of the administrator? If not, is there a motion related to that, to 163?
I'll make the motion to approve 2021-163.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2021-163. Discussion? Commissioner Carpenter?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my support for doing this. I think it makes a lot of sense to contribute our piece to what was a very successful vaccination effort with Operation Safe, and once again to thank the community partners that made that happen. You know, in addition to Clay County's Health Board, we also had the North Kansas City Hospital, Liberty Hospital, and of course Cerner. You know, I think they did a lot of amazing work, and very grateful that we can play our role in supporting that. And then just wanted to also take this opportunity one additional time to keep on everybody's radar that I think we probably have more work to do as we go through the rest of the summer and into the fall in terms of encouraging vaccination here in the county. As I'm sure some of you have read, Missouri is now #1 in the country in per capita COVID and hospitalizations. And so, you know, it's a pretty direct tie to areas of the state where there are lower vaccination rates. And, you know, one of our hospitals, Liberty Hospital, treats folks from some of those counties, and they're seeing a pretty significant uptick in the number of folks in their ICU. So we've got more work to do, and look forward to working with both of you in that ongoing effort.
I just want to make the comment that this is, I think, an entirely positive thing for us to be doing. In case of I only vote in these proceedings in the event of a tie. My guess is I will not be voting on this, but certainly that does not diminish my support for this effort. Just for a quick synopsis of the history of this, the county, in fact, earlier this year put $106,000 roughly towards the ability to allow those citizens, to give the opportunity for those citizens who wish to have vaccination to be able to do so. This effort, that is to say Operation Safe, is in conjunction, it's in a consortium involving North Kansas City Hospital, Liberty Hospital, Cerner Corporation, and the Clay County Health Centers. This money does not go to any one entity. It does not go to a private business. In the case of Cerner, this goes directly to the operation as a way to make whole the monies put forward to make this opportunity possible. Another thing worth, I think, recognizing in this is that we have been working in partnership with the City of Kansas City. The City of Kansas City has roughly 51% of the citizens of Clay County in that municipality. There was a resolution passed at the City Council in which it was memorialized that we would essentially put in even amounts. So while we are happy to be working with our partners in Kansas City to be able to make sure that this opportunity is there for citizens who would avail themselves of it. So I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a synopsis of what was going on and where this money was going. It is substantial money, but I believe money well spent. Are there any comments from anyone in the public before we go to our vote?
I close.
Thank you very much. With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Before we get started, we have two other items, and the sense of it, just from looking at the accumulated people here, is my guess is that there are a lot of people here who have an interest or perhaps wish to speak on 2021-161, which is the St. Mary's Home for Mothers group home issue. My question at this moment is there anyone here that is is here to speak for or against or comment on 2021-162, appointment of member to Clay County Public Health Center? Okay, you would like to speak on that issue? I think what I would like to do, because my sense of it is that 161 will be taking a considerable amount of time. 162, I believe, will take a relatively short amount of time. So if we could have the indulgence and the unanimous consent of the commission, we'll go ahead and move to 162, to take the amount of time that takes to take care of that issue, and then go right to 161. Do I have...
Yes, for me.
Yes.
Very well. With that, we will go to 2021-162. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-162 is to appoint a member to the Clay County Public Health Center Board of Trustees, that appointment being Dr. Lancer Gates.
Thank you very much. As the presiding commissioner, I would be the one to nominate persons for this post, and with of course, the confirmation of the commission. So I will make the motion for the approval of 2021-162 with the name of Lancer Gates inserted in the space available. Discussion? No. I believe there was someone from the public who wanted to speak, or were you just here as an interested party? I'd like to speak about that issue. Very well. If you would, we have a podium there, and as you make your way to the podium, I'll go ahead and give you some of the guidelines, also for the other folks who may want to speak. When you come up to the podium to speak, please make sure that the green light is on your microphone. State your name, and please speak clearly. We are having audio as well as video recording, so that way we make sure that whatever you have to say is properly recorded.
Commissioner, if I may, I just talked to the gentleman. He was mistaken. He actually intends to speak to 161, not 162.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anyone here to speak on 162.
Okay, well, in that case, no problem. In that case, if there's no further discussion and there's no public comment on 162, I will close. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to 2021-162. Mr. Administrator?
Commissioners, 2021-161 is asking for approval in the matter of a conditional use permit for the St. Mary's Home for Mothers. Planning and zoning is here to add additional comments.
As we go forward on this issue, and I will recognize Mr. Jones here in a moment, what I would like to do would be to have Mr. Jones go ahead and give the presentation of 2021-162. I would like to hear briefly from the applicant, as briefly as reasonable. We've heard a lot of this before, so I would ask that, please make it as brief as you can and still make your point. And then we will open it up to comments. After we've had comments from the commission, we will open it up to comments from the public. You might want to start lining up there at the point you want to do that. The other thing, I would have two other requests. One is if there is a repetition of the remarks, please just indicate that, if you wouldn't mind, indicate that, yes, you do agree with some of the previous speakers, so we don't necessarily belabor the point. The other thing is, there were a number of people who were able to give testimony on this issue at our last meeting. I would like to give preference and an opportunity first for those who have not spoken on this issue before, and then if there is someone who would like to bring something new to the table as far as for our consideration, I think that would be appropriate. With that, Mr. Jones?
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is the conditional use permit request for a group home class 1, more specifically a maternity home located at 23615 Northeast 100th Street, approximately 13.71 acres. I'm not going to go into all the detail that I did last week. There are 6 criteria, which I have up on the screen, which must be met with any conditional use permit application. I want to remind the commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission did vote 4-2 to 0 to recommend approval. And then really the one update that I have for the commission has to do with the water in that area. So Water District Number 7 is the water district for this property. I was able to speak to the board president on the phone. He indicated that Water District 7 gets their water from Water District Number 4. He indicated that Water District 4 has never threatened to shut off District Number 7. And he basically indicated that from time to time, they have water leaks where they lose up to 20,000 gallons a day, depending on how bad the leak is, and those leaks can go for a period of weeks. And District 4 has not threatened to shut them off. He did indicate that the board, he could take an item in front of the board where they could give written comments to the commission if the commission chose, but they did not have a board meeting scheduled before today's meeting. I also did reach out to Water District Number 4. They indicated that they do supply the water for Water District 7, and they indicated that the only reason that Water District 7 would be shut off is if the City of Liberty shut off Water District 4, because they get their water through the City of Liberty. If this is still an issue that the commission still feels needs to be addressed, I would recommend that a condition be added. We would loop the water district back in if this use is approved at the time of a building permit, and a condition could be added requiring approval from District Number 7 before that building permit could be issued. Really, that's the only additional information that I have, other than I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Did the chairman indicate that he foresaw any issues as far as the increased water usage and their ability to keep pressure, or did he address that?
He did. He said that he felt it was a similar use, since they were using the same structure as the monastery, to the original conditional use permit that was issued.
Are there any questions of Mr. Jones from the commission? Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
Very well. I would like to, as we go forward, remind commissioners that we would, I believe, Mr. Counselor, if we were to add this as a condition, what Mr. Jones had recommended, that would require an amendment to this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Very well. So we will, at whatever point a commissioner would like to add that, whether you'd like to add it now or whether you would like to add it after we've heard more testimony, I would be prepared to recognize a commissioner to make that motion. Mr. Jones, I'm assuming that you have I assume that Mr. Jones has the proper language to insert?
Yes, would you like some language for a condition?
If I may, I would suggest that we wait to add language until we actually make a decision on you make a decision on which way to go, because depending on which way you go, the language would become irrelevant.
That is a good point. So if it were denied, that would be irrelevant. I just want to make sure that should a commissioner decide to go ahead and add that at the proper point, that there was language existing that could be inserted that was already vetted. If that is the case, then we will go forward on this. With that, we will hear from the applicant if they would like to give us a short presentation of the points made at the last meeting.
Thank you. My name is Matt Lohr, and I'm the interim executive director for the St. Mary's Home for Mothers. It is actually just thinking on the way over here tonight, and just as these meetings, this is now my third, just how much excitement I still have around this project and its potential and the opportunity to bring life. When Deacon called me about this opportunity and understanding of my faith and my clinical background, I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years. I've overseen almost 500 foster homes. I hold clinical licenses to practice as a clinician, both in Kansas and Missouri. I've given a great deal of supervision around working with special needs populations, and especially those that have been affected by trauma, and the sensitivity around that. So it's with that that I'm excited and pleased to be here tonight. Some of the things in terms of looking at new information of how we might look to operate and look at our program. One of the things that is a concern that has been noted, and I had an opportunity to visit with one of our neighbors, was about the possibility of capping the census. Okay, capping the census meaning how many residents would live at this site. Now, when I say residents, these would be clients that we would have there. Currently, we are seeking to have 15 moms and their children that would come to the center that are over the age of 5 would count toward that 15. I'm still wanting to maintain that original intent of that premise, but I also want to underscore that we'll never go over 25 clients, okay? 25 clients means, when I'm saying this tonight, I won't admit or allow more than 12 moms at the facility because each mom is going to be counted because they're going to be pregnant, okay? They're bringing life into the world. So right away, I'm going to go to 24. This is with no children. This is assuming and if one or two of them are having twins or whatever, I'll deal with that. That'd be a beautiful problem to have to deal with. So this I want to underscore first and foremost is because the way the language was reading was taking this to a limit or to a place I would never, and none of our board members ever would want to go. We wouldn't want 15 moms there with 3 children each, with all under the age of 5 and bringing this to a count of 60. Okay, we would not do that. So rest assured, we wouldn't go over 25. I'm prepared to make that part of our conditional agreement because it's also good practice. That feels about right for what we'd want to have there. Recognizing that of those 25, 10 to 12 of them, are newborns. Okay, are going to be newborns. So that's the first conditional piece that we wanted to make. Another important piece that in talking with the board is that this whether we advertise or put our address, I have no issue. We've not taken a client yet. We're not anticipating having one until the end of the year, probably into next year, because we are planning major renovations to this property. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of investments that we want to make to improvements to it. Because we want this facility, I want this facility, and so does the board, we want it to be pristine. And people such as different foundations, people that we're speaking to, these are the folks that have been doing this for a long time and have made this commitment that they understand they want this to be pristine and they want it to be a beautiful place as well. Because it's in the beauty that the healing is going to take place. It's how we practice our clinical work is in the beauty of the place. So I want to keep this pristine. The other pieces I think that are important for me just to underscore is that we're not going to be taking placements on emergency basis, okay? All people will be screened and assessed before we accept them, okay? And that's an important component. We also have the ability to do this because many of the crisis pregnancy centers, one in particular has offered to allow us to come there and do screenings. And with technology and use of Zoom technology and other sorts of pieces, we can do this remotely. But we can also go there and do it in person. But it's important to us that we get people because we're looking for a long-term commitment from our residents, okay? Again, our residents can stay with us for as long as they need to and as long as they're working their program. We're setting this at 1 year post their time there, but we're not looking for, and I don't want a great deal of turnover, and I want longer-term investments. I think it was you, Mr. Carpenter, that noted at the last meeting in terms of your familiarity with working with homeless populations, why it is important to see these folks struggle with multiple levels, and they take multiple levels of investment to move them educationally, spiritually, emotionally. These are all the effects of trauma and the effects of sometimes being unhoused for long periods of time. So again, we're not taking emergency placements. I don't have any issue with us not putting, Our Lady's Inn doesn't do that, but that doesn't mean we have to operate as Our Lady's Inn. We are fine to look at not putting this, to having the P.O. box, as I said, for example. And above all, I really just want to underscore, because at the very first meeting, although some of this is repeat, at the first meeting, Kip read something, Mr. Jones, about planning and zoning. And I highlighted this tonight because I thought it was important, okay? Planning staff should strive to make decisions which increase choice and opportunity for all persons. Recognize a special responsibility to plan for the needs of disadvantaged people, and urge that policies, institutions, and decisions which restrict choices and opportunities be changed. Okay? This is a disadvantaged population that we are working with. And one of the things, working a lot with, as I said, I diagnose, treat, I serve as an expert witness, I hold a PhD in family studies, I've overseen 500 plus foster homes. I've trained over 100 resource families in taking difficult placements and managing children with disrupted behaviors. This has really been my whole life's work in what I do. But it's in this special commitment that we see, these people, you'd be surprised, they're not far removed from our own circle of people. Well, sometimes when conversations take on, we talk about them like it's an other group. And many times we don't realize these are family, friends, or acquaintances, or people who might not be as far removed from us as we would think. And that's been my experience in a lot of areas of mental health, is that these folks need us. And this is a special opportunity to do something in a way that will be, as I said, I want to involve research institutions. I'm affiliated with numerous universities in this area and have taught and adjuncted several of them. But I want to look at how we can look at a model that's going to actually show that we're working and improving these women's lives. We're going to use researched instruments. We're going to use interventions that are evidence-based, meaning they've been shown to work with this population around trauma or at risk for substance abuse. And these are the component pieces that this is about quality. Honestly, I want to have like 8 to 10 moms there, probably at any given time in reality. And that's where I'm saying this piece is about, it's about quality. It isn't about, and there is no incentive at all, as I said before, for me having a higher census or taking anyone, okay? We exist because of the goodwill and charity of people that want to promote life. A woman shouldn't have to choose an abortion, okay, because she doesn't have a place to live, or doesn't have supportive people around her. if she wants to have this baby. And that's something I think is at the forefront of what we're doing at St. Mary's Home for Mothers. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners of the applicant?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
There are no questions. Thank you. I did have one question, Mr. Jones, though. Mr. Jones, when you were consulting the chairman over the water issue, I assume that we were looking at the population that is indicated on this as far as the draw of the water. Is that an accurate assumption on my part?
Well, the capacity of the house would affect, obviously, the water usage. The board president indicated that he expected this to be one of their larger users, but that the district could support this as a larger user.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. With that, we will go ahead and hear from members of the public who would like to weigh in. Yes, Mr. Counselor.
Yeah, real quick, before we start taking testimony, everyone received an email, I think, earlier today from Mr. Bowen, and it had an attachment that could not be opened. At least, I don't think anybody could open it. Mr. Bowen is here and brought in hard copy that attachment, so I'd just like to distribute it so you could have it while you're listening as well.
I think that would be appreciated. While you're distributing that, I would ask that, again, that any citizen who would care to comment, please identify themselves. I believe the green light is on. Try to speak into the microphone. And if you want to, it's not necessary that you could make comment without being in favor or in opposition. It might help to say so, but I certainly would appreciate that. Also, as I said, we will try to get as many people through and make sure everybody gets heard to the degree we're able to. With that, please proceed. I see our sheriff has come to the podium.
Good evening, Commissioners. Will Aiken, Clay County Sheriff. I don't have anything to add to this, but I know I've been trying to keep up with this, this effort. And there have been questions in the past about security, safety, and stuff like that, and perhaps alluding to our response capabilities at the Clay County Sheriff's Office. So I wanted to make myself available for the commission and any of the citizens that are here tonight, that if there are any questions about what our capabilities are, I'm free to answer those questions the best I can.
Okay, all right, we appreciate that. Do you have any observations to make, or are you mainly here for questions?
Just here for questions.
Just for answering inquiries?
Yep.
While you're there, are there any questions from the commission? We appreciate you making yourself available to us, Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak and giving the floor to me. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Phil Hutchison. My property is 9808 Cameron Road, and by the picture, Kip is highlighting that. So my driveway looks a little like a toothpick floss, if you So I'd like to address, not only as a homeowner, but also as a member of the board of the Public Water System District Number 7. I have some information that may be very helpful to you on numbers. So let's deal with the water issue first. We are a small water system. We have approximately 110 meters that are actually powered up and in use. Out of those 110, there's probably about 8 that they don't use any water. They pay the minimum. They've decided maybe to have, they might have a farm, so they have 2 meters, one on the far end, and, you know, with mind that they might develop that. About 5 or 6 are very low water consumption. Sometimes they barely use the minimum, which is 1,000 gallons per month. So at the height of our, the nuns' occupation, they used about 25,000 gallons maximum, and that's when they would have a big shindig with a lot of people available. So at that time, they were like the number 3 water user. And just this last month, we had a customer who is a farmer use 65,000 gallons of water last month. So that would typically put the nuns, or the St. Mary's now, in like the number 4 position. Now, what you need to understand about our water system, on a typical month, we might consume or use between 300,000, and in July, that will bump way up to 800,000 gallons per month. And about 3 years ago, incidentally, I've served on the board for, this is my 4th year. So right when I first came into the board, and there's this huge learning curve, you know, commissioners would understand this, about where the water lines are, who these people are. You know, it's hard to know 110 people, and I know very few of them really. But we had a huge leak, and we had a problem, and we could not find that. And we were losing 1 million gallons a month, plus what we were supplying. And we finally found it. It was under Fishing River. That's why it was so difficult to find. At that time, there were no complaints of low pressure or anyone that did not have water. So, as they mentioned, number 4 supplies our water. The main meter that we read to establish how much water we use is directly across from St. Mary's. They actually are the very first customer that draws water off that meter. So that gives you just a little idea of kind of what our water system is like. And if you've driven up H Highway, particularly some months ago, number 4, Liberty Water, is putting in that brand new water main, and it's about a 10 or 12-inch main. So they've updated the water system, and they're going to be able to deliver even more water to number 7 when that comes online. So I believe that's all the things I have comment. Before I move on, do you have any questions about our water system? Incidentally, I talked to Brace Bailey, who is our president, and he gave me permission to talk on behalf of the water system, number 7. And I have a list that I'll leave with the commission, which is a phone contact list of the members and any pertinent information you might need if there's an emergency or any question.
Very
So,
well.
do you have any questions before I move on?
Are there any questions from commissioners at this point?
No, thank you.
Did you have more to add to your testimony?
Yeah, just a real quick comment. It's kind of like being a homeowner. So, first of all, I want to compliment all of my neighbors. They've, we've been there 7 years now. And if you would have told me 20 years ago that I would have been able to own a piece, my wife and I, my wife's studio in the back, would have owned a piece of property like this, it's beyond my wildest dreams. And I got to tell you, God has richly blessed us. Now, all of my neighbors, they've all improved their property. They are fantastic neighbors. And whatever this board votes tonight, I can live with your decision. But our neighborhood is nice, and I've noticed that in the last month that St. Mary's has owned the property, they've actually done more improvements on that property in the last month than has taken place in the last 5 years. So I think that's hopefully a good monetary example that they're going to keep that up, I hope. And I think we need to hold their feet to the fire if this is approved, so to speak. I do have just like a question type comment. So I like to play devil's advocate. Let's say this was voted no. So what good is a piece of property that has 19 bedrooms? So I've said to my wife, if I was 10 years younger, I would sell my home and I would buy that house and put a wedding venue in there. So would the commission approve a wedding venue? Would they approve a winery? You've got to have a liquor license. You'd have to obviously come before the commission and rezone all of that. How about a bread and breakfast? How about a group home? How about a transitional house for felons? How about a for-profit business, a rest home for the aged? If we want to just simply make it a residence, you know, I worked with a guy, I retired from the Union Pacific. He had 13 children. He was a true Catholic, terrific individual. There's people out there that have 15 and 20 children. You see them on TV. You move to Utah, and that's a very common thing, a compound. So my thinking is, like, be careful what you wish for. I think St. Mary's might be a terrific thing for the Lord's work. I like the fact that they might limit their personnel there to give us a little kind of assurance. So in closing, my wife and I will be thankful for all our neighbors and the great neighborhood we live in, and we'll respect your decision. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Would the next citizen come forward to comment, please?
Hi, my name's Kimberly Peppers, and I had the privilege of serving as a program manager at Mother's Refuge, which it's a maternity home in Independence, if you're not familiar with it. So I worked there as the program manager for 6 years, but have been involved with Mother's Refuge for over 10 years. I now have 5 kids and I'm married, so I stay home with my kids. So that's the only reason why I don't still work there. It's an amazing ministry. So when I heard about this and I heard 19 rooms, I was like, I have to make time to be here because I'm passionate about helping moms have a safe place to raise their kids. And so with my experience at Mother's Refuge, it's in Independence, right off of 40 Highway, and it's right on the bus line in a really small neighborhood, and the houses are right next to each other. There's no extra parking. We park off the street. There's very limited parking in the driveway, but yet we were still able to have all of our monthly staff meetings there. We also had our open houses that we would have people come in, and it just wasn't an issue. We even had neighbors get behind what we were trying to do to help with these women, and they would come to the open house and bring gifts, you know, for Christmas and that kind of thing. The other thing with the concern for the drugs and alcohol and violence, I can speak to that, like he said, there will be a screening process, and that's how it was at Mother's Refuge. We interviewed all of the girls before they were able to come, and they knew that we had zero tolerance for drugs, alcohol, and fighting. Those were 3, you know, if they knew that they would have to leave the program. And they also signed a contract stating, you know, that they want to be in this program. Even girls in foster care, if they said, I don't want to do this program, we did not accept them. And so I think that really makes a difference when it's somebody wanting to better, you know, their life, and it's not that they're forced to be there. So that really cut down. I can honestly tell you there was not ever drugs on the property. Rarely was there fighting between the girls. I mean, it was very, very rare. And then as well as the police being called, it just didn't happen. They knew the expectations. The third thing really quick I wanted to speak to is the great need that there is for moms to have a safe place to raise their babies. And I remember days where I would get call after call after call from girls asking, you know, for a place to stay, and I would have to give them other numbers, and they would say, it's full, I tried there, and there's a huge need for it. So I just think it would be a huge missed opportunity if this doesn't go through. So thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up with this citizen? Thank you very much. Next person, please.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Roberts. I live at 9918 Cameron Road. That is the property directly to the east of the applicant's property, and which shares a property line with the applicant property. I'd like to express my objections to the granting of the application for the conditional use permit filed by the applicant, which, as you know, requests that the commission approve the property to be used as a group home. And I would like to ask you to please consider the following. First of all, as you know, generally the zoning in this area is for single-family use, and I believe that residential single-family use of the property is in fact its best and most appropriate use, and the one that is generally intended by the Clay County Land Development Code. I believe that the property is extremely viable as a residential property. In fact, it's my understanding that there was interest in the property as a single-family residence immediately prior to the purchase of the property by the applicant. I do not believe that simply because the property is large, that it is fated only to be used as a communal living situation. Simply because it has heretofore been utilized for group living, obviously by the nuns who previously occupied the property, its use as a single-family dwelling is still appropriate and extremely viable, in my opinion. Next, I would like to point out the fact that at no time has the applicant ever made any assertion or provided documentation as to a pressing need for this type of facility in Clay County, Missouri. I do not question the importance of the mission of the applicants in general. I do not question the sincerity of the applicant in seeking to provide this type of service generally. What I do question is their choice of rural Clay County for its placement. Other facilities operated by the applicant organization, as I understand, are based upon which the applicant is basing this project are located in urban areas such as St. Louis, Missouri. As you know, the Clay County Land Development Code provides that its purpose and intent is to, quote, promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of residents and visitors to Clay County. Nowhere in the application or accompanying business plan or other promotional materials has the applicant ever alleged that there is an overwhelming need in this community for the type of service they intend to provide, or why this community and our neighborhood, above all others, is the necessary location for such a project. Further, they have never asserted that they will perform any now today we're hearing a little bit different story, but previously we have never heard anything about the screening process, and never have we heard that any part of the screening process will be to determine whether the individuals who seek to become residents of the facility are in fact residents of Clay County, Missouri. If the county is going to make special provision for a conditional use permit, which, as you know, is an exception to the general provisions of the county's land development code, I would certainly think at least the commission should consider whether and to what extent the use would benefit the county itself and its existing residents and citizens before approving such a use. If the individuals housed by the applicants in the group home are not even residents of Clay County, I am at a loss to anticipate or articulate what benefit will accrue to Clay County or its citizens and taxpayers from the use proposed. The applicant organization is not based in Clay County and has no history of devotion or contribution to the county itself. It is only here because it has purchased this property, which happened to exist in Clay County, Missouri. I submit that it is not appropriate or beneficial to jeopardize the peace, quiet, harmony, safety, and security of the existing residents of our neighborhood and community in which this residence is located in order to serve persons who may not start out as Clay County residents, may live here on a temporary transient basis, and then will return to Jackson, Johnson, Cass, Wyandotte, Ray, or whatever county or state they originally came from. What contribution to the community, county, or neighborhood will this make? My final concern that I will address is the issue of the number of people anticipated to be living at the facility at any one time. Again, tonight the applicant has made a modification of its proposal with regard to the number of residents. But as you know, the Clay County ordinance defines group home under these circumstances as permitting 15 or fewer residents. Nowhere in the ordinance could I find that the word resident was defined. The applicant has previously stated on numerous occasions that individuals here at the meeting and at previous conversations with individuals that they do not consider children under 5 to be residents. Therefore, they propose to house up to 15 women. Again, this is based on their previous statements, some of whom may have existing children under 5, as well as the newborn children who are born while the children are residing in the facility, who may live there for 12 to 18 or more months, which brings the total number of residents to over, perhaps significantly over, as the applicant has even admitted here tonight, to over 15. This is also not taking into account any full-time overnight staff who will be living at the property, to which the applicant has also made reference on several occasions. There is no authority that I could find for the applicant to unilaterally and arbitrarily, without any authority, redefine the word resident as those over the age of 5 years old, so that they can simply increase the number of people who are going to reside in the home. As you know, the commission may make specific requirements as part of any proposal of a conditional use permit that it deems necessary for the given activity to be conducted on the parcel of land. Although I am requesting the commission to deny the application outright, if the commission approves the application, I would request that it specifically include a condition requiring that no less than 15 persons, defined as any person, regardless of age, reside in the residence at any time, including adults, children, and staff. If I and the other neighbors represented here wanted to live next to an apartment building, we probably would not have moved to rural Clay County. In every meaningful way, this project will essentially be operating an apartment building. Many unrelated individuals living in the space for short periods of time with no ownership interest, no pride in the property that comes with ownership, no intent or ability to remain permanently, and no incentive to improve or contribute to the neighborhood, community, or the environment, and with no prior and no future interest in making it their future home, their permanent home. Therefore, I would ask the commission to deny the application again for the conditional use permit, or if you do vote to approve it, I would also ask that you include a condition in the approval regarding the number of, again, the number of individuals who may reside at the location, and also that require that any and all individuals who are served by the group home are residents of Clay County, Missouri, and that they are in need of the services that the applicant provides. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Were there any questions or clarification from this citizen? Thank you. Next person, please.
Hello, I'm Ryan McComas. I live at 23411 Northeast 100th Street, directly to the west of the property. I asked the commission today to deny this motion. I have looked at the approval criteria, and I see multiple that do not match. First, my general welfare. I have a pond that borders the property, and not once has there been any mention of the safety dangers that this brings to children and mothers along the side. This brings critters, snakes, deer, muskrats. Like, there's animals out there that haven't been touched, not to mention that the pond itself can be deadly, especially to somebody who can't swim, a baby that doesn't know how to deal with water, or a mother. So that can affect my welfare, because if any person dies on my property, I can be held liable. Also, it will hurt my property value. And this ties in also with the scale F on this approval criteria. Use will not construct with current scales of noise. Currently, I get home from work, I go out on my back porch, and I listen to bullfrogs. I see a neighbor drive by. But they are asking to approve a multifamily home that is not only a multifamily home, it is also their playground. They don't have area to travel. They don't have cars to travel to other places to go to a playground. It will be in their backyard. It will be in my backyard. And if you're at the proposed property, talking by the house, I can almost make out the words that you say, just you and me talking. What will it sound like with a bunch of kids playing down there? I love kids. I think it's a great purpose that you guys are going for. I don't think this is the right spot. There's a lot of other places that could potentially be right for you. And taking them out into the country where it's beautiful, you know it's beautiful. Everybody sees that it's beautiful out there. But people move out there for the peace, the quiet, the tranquility. I go fishing on my pond and just listen to the silence. I've only been here 3 months, and if you approve this, that will be taken away from me. I would not have bought this house if I had known that there was going to be 15 women, up to 15 women, with babies living next door, with a playground, that have nowhere else to go except for in the house and on that property. Also, there is a public safety notice on there. I believe it is an E. I have been asked to put a fire hydrant on my pond to provide safety for this house. And yet, not once have they offered to provide services to the community. They're coming in, they're expecting us to provide our services, to be great neighbors, as we love to do, being in the country. That's what we do. But yet, it's all for them. Matt Lord said earlier, make decisions to improve all people. That he is not holding up to right now. He's holding up to that for his focus on this purpose to get these pregnant women in a house. But that is not all people. That is not our community. And, I mean, if you guys vote to approve this, you've seen how much things have changed in the past couple of weeks on terms of how many people are allowed, what will be done, how many babies. Once you approve this, it's approved, and they can change. Things can keep pushing forward in how they see fit. I personally do not have trust in them. They made a mistake, they cut my hayfield. That's not a problem. But when I see that neglect over and over again, that's where my issue is. So if you approve this, what trust do you have that they will continue to uphold their word that they put forward today? I hope that you listen to these comments and my other neighbors and deny this request. Thank you.
Questions or clarification? Next citizen, please.
My name's Liz Davis. I live at 9520 Cameron Road. I spoke at the last meeting during the day, but I came up late because I had work obligations. I couldn't get here for the whole meeting, and so.
Please go ahead and speak into the mic, that way we
Again,
can.
I'm sorry.
No problem, thank you.
I'm sorry. You'd think I'd be a better public speaker, but I am not. And I want to thank this commission for being able to put the meetings on YouTube. I'm not that tech savvy, but I do know about YouTube, and I listened to it, so I just wanted to address some comments that were made by applicant Lore. First of all, and some other people that spoke. The realtor first spoke that said that house sitting empty was a bigger draw on our house ownership than having this use. Well, Cheryl Roberts, of course, again, is my colleague and my neighbor, so I'm gonna, she bought that house on the first day on the market after multiple offers, so I think she paid, at least, I think she paid market price, she told me, but I think she may have actually had it and with 0 conditions. So I don't think our property values have been hurt at all by an empty house that's acres away. Second of all, there has been families that have been interested in it. There is. It had languished on the market for a long time, mainly for a lot of reasons why houses languish on the market. Again, I do a lot of valuation of property in the jobs that I have. They asked, it was originally listed at $888, which was never going to be a realistic price. And so all of a sudden, it just disappeared as the price kept going down. So that's one thing I want to address. And the other thing that caused my heart to stop just about when I listened to the meeting is when the clergy for the St. Mary's home said that most of these women, or a good deal, a number of these women are sex trafficking victims. And again, I've had training in that for my job, and they're per se domestic violence victims. They have had a man or a group of men take them, not let them leave, and force them into acts of prostitution. So those women are high risk for being bothered. They have enough information to send these people to prison for a long time. So I think that's a real concern, that they're going to place them in a house. Synergy takes those types of women and do a great job with them and give them a lot of services, but they're in lockdown facilities that do not put their address on Facebook. And he says, well, the Facebook, we're not going to open for another year and a half. Believe me, I had this talk with a teenage boy that looked a lot like my son, that once you put it out on social media, it's out there forever. So that's a concern. That was my biggest concern when I listened to it. And I know we all sound like we're whiny, that we don't want our property values to go down, but I am very concerned. Again, I've spent my whole career trying to make life better for the women and children in this county. And I could have done, believe me, the judges aren't lining up to do family law. They just aren't. But anyway, it's been my life goal to make life better for these kids. The other concern I had is I looked at the statute regarding group homes, and the statute in 210 is very, says that any group home that houses children has to have a daycare license. And if they have to have a daycare license, the fact that that is not fenced, the area that the children will be playing when there's a pond, is going to be required. So again, I'm hoping that you don't approve this for so many reasons I've already stated the last time I was here, is that first of all, I think that their area needs to be fenced. Mr. McComas had also written a letter that we submitted the last time, and I assume he didn't really say some of the things today than he wrote in that letter, so I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read it. I think we filed it for him, or sent it, I think he eventually sent it to you, is that he feels like he's going to have to fence his property, but he's a 30-year-old kid, and he just bought that house, and he says he's going to have to borrow money because he doesn't want kids to get in that pond and drown. But if it has to be licensed as a daycare facility or a child care facility, it'll need to be fenced. The other thing that we talked about, my husband's talked to the fire district, the guy that's in charge of our volunteer fire department. Again, we don't have it. And Mr. McComas is not going to let them put the fire hydrant in. If he doesn't let them put in the fire hydrant to drain his pond, they're going to have to buy a fire prevention system, or I'm not saying it right, but that should also be included. You know, it makes it sound like we don't care about women and children. I don't. All the bedrooms are on the second floor. There are no exits to the outside on the second floor. There's no fire escapes. The fire department, the man from the volunteer fire department said the only thing to do is rope ladders. You can't get little kids and pregnant women down rope ladders. So I don't want to see anybody hurt. I really don't. So if the commission does that, and again, I'm concerned about the population. If you prove it as written, they will be 30 people there. He told Mr. Applicant Lohr on the date May, it wasn't that long ago when we went to the open house, he told myself, my husband, and my neighbor Matt Cundiff when we were there that they hoped to open with 15 people. And if they weren't going to be reasonable about the number of people or even honest about the number of people, then put a number on it. Put a number that we know how many people are there. The fire district needs to know that. The sheriff's department needs to know that. We all need to know how many people are there. And all their screening process, they say they're going to take CoSNet. Again, you can't find, if a woman has ever had an order of protection, her name does not appear on CaseNet. You can't see it because that's just a safety issue. And again, I thank this commission because I think I've been coming to mission meetings my whole career asking for money at least once a year at my budget time. And I appreciate this commission has taken a serious step towards transparency, because I think that there's been a lot of mistrust in between office holders and the public and the commission. So I appreciate that. I've had difficulty getting simple documents that I feel like as a taxpayer I'm entitled to, and so has my neighbor. You know, the highway department, you know, magically decided they would give us that one-page graph after Mr. Bowen complained that he had gone to 3 different offices and couldn't get it. We asked for emails between, my husband asked for emails in between the planning and zoning and the applicant, and was told that he had to, I'm sorry, I'm just really nervous. Cheryl's so much a better public speaker than I am, I'm jealous. But anyway, He said that we had to make a sunshine request, and we did, and I called Andy Rothman, again, only because I know these things. My neighbors don't know who represents planning and zoning. My neighbors don't know who your council is. So, you know, I don't feel like that I got, so anyway, Andy Rothman, I said, do you want me to give you the sunshine request, or do I give it to the planning and zoning? And he said, don't worry, and he gave me some of the emails. And there's just one email that really caused me concern, because there was many emails between the director of planning and planning and zoning manager and the applicant. Because I want to feel like we're all here on a level playing field. This is the email that I received in the first batch. I asked for a second batch. Mr. Graham tried to give me a zip line thing today about additional emails that happened since the last meeting, and it didn't work, so I don't have those. On May the 24th of this year, the email from Kip Jones to, I believe, there's different people that I've never heard of. I guess it's to the applicant more. Thanks for the additional information. This is helpful. Just a heads up, we are starting to get a lot more phone calls about your requests. So don't surprise if we have some opposition at the meeting. Let us know if you have any questions. And I don't think Mr. Jones works for the applicant. I think he works for the taxpayers of this county. So that caused concern. So Friday, on the 18th, our courthouse was closed, but I went to work and did work, and then I came up to ask for a sunshine request for the additional emails. I came to the county clerk and gave it to Sandy, whatever her last name is. And I had asked the request. She had sent me an email Friday. I didn't get it till later. And so I came up on Monday and gave her the check and with the number on it. So she said, she took my check, and I said, you know, this is for our meeting on Wednesday. If there is a way to expedite it and there's an extra charge for that, I'm willing to pay it. And she said, are you an advocate for this? Oh, well, she said, what meeting you're going to? I said, the commission meeting. She goes, oh, this is about the group home. And she goes, are you an advocate? And I said, no. And I don't think that your county clerk should ask why somebody wants something. I don't think that's part of what a county clerk could do when it looks like there's transparency and a level playing field. And I have more knowledge and privilege than all my neighbors have, which I try never to use. I never introduce myself as Judge Davis, and I can tell you 3/4 of the people who I have lived next door to for years have no idea what I do for a living. So, you know, I am just Joe Average the second I walk off that bench. And so I just want you to be aware, if this happened at with the clerk's office and our office, and someone was treated like that, I would want to know. So it just kind of leaves a bad feeling. Secondly, I echo it. If they want to limit the number of people, they need to put a number on it. Because every time it changes. Last week it was okay 10 to 12. Now he's going to get down to 8 just to get you to vote yes. But if you pass this the way it's written, there will be no fence. There'll be no fire. It's not prevention. It's, I forget what that's called, but it's basically a tank with water there for them to put into the truck with a diesel motor, because electricity doesn't work if there's a fire usually. So that's what they need to do. So those are the things, just basic safety. And I am concerned about, and the sheriff, you know, I've talked to the sheriff, and the sheriff has been, we've known each other a short time, but we've talked a lot about many issues. And, you know, he's going to do his level best. But we all, when we move out to the country, we realize we don't have a police station across the street like people in Liberty do, or people in Gladstone do, or people even in North Kansas City. Every neighbor I know very well has a gun in the house, because we know that if somebody breaks into our house, that we have the right to defend ourselves, and we'll probably have to, because the sheriff can't be on Cameron Road when he has the whole county to take care of. And I will say that, you know, I know most of the sheriff deputies, because they all work in the courthouse and come see them, and they do search warrants in front of me and things like that. I'm just, you know, it isn't that I just don't think this program is very well thought out. They're not going to take domestic violence victims, but they're going to take sex trafficking victims. They're going to do all this. There's going to be 15 women. Children under 5 don't count. They use water. They get out into ponds. You know, children count, and they need to have a definite number. And and the other thing is they don't even know where their property line is. And Mr. McComas put that in the letter. Not only did they mow his hayfield, they mowed all around his pond. And when he complained to them about that, and it's in his letter, applicant Laura said, well, it's a lovely place to take a stroll. Well, it's not their property. It's not like if you go to Johnson County, your neighbor has a better yard, so you get to have your yard party over there. It's people's property. And you know, he makes probably the reason that he could afford that house is he was going to sell his hay, or that he eventually wants to have cattle. But right now, in his letter, he says he's going to have to worry about trying to get a loan to put up a fence just to protect himself and the children next door. So I don't think he should have to bear that expense. Ms. Roberts and Mr. McComas are the most closely situated by them. And I'm sure Ms. Roberts also has a pond, and I'm sure she's worried about that too. So, I mean, everybody who never has lived in the country, which was me the day after I got married, and moved out there, it's surprising. It's not the same. You are on your own a lot. And I am not complaining that the sheriff hasn't done as best job as he can, and I don't expect to have the same kind of service that somebody who lives across the street in a city. So those are just the things. I have been a little upset that records have been difficult to get, only because these hearings were coming up rather quickly. And I just don't think if I was anybody else that didn't work at the courthouse, I wouldn't have got them at all, which is unfortunate.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Were there any clarifications? No. How many more?
I'm sorry, I got one other thing. And then also, I'm sorry, applicant Laura had talked about how all the women were going to get training at Job Corps in Excelsior. So I'm familiar with Job Corps because a lot of our youth that age out of foster care, we try to encourage them to go there because of the place. It only serves people from 16 to 24. I talked to the director yesterday, and she said that is correct, that they can't take anybody. It's a federally funded program just to get young people into a trade if they don't, and help them get a high school education. I thought they all had to live on campus. She said they do not have to live on campus if they live in Excelsior Springs. They would probably let these people drive back and forth. I didn't ask about this house. I didn't ask if they'd talked to anybody. There are no children allowed on campus. So if these women go to training, they're going to have to leave their children at the group home, which again emphasizes the fact this will have to be a licensed daycare facility. Okay. So those are the things that if you see fit to pass it, and again, the other thing is on their application, on their graph, they include 2 acres of Mr. McComas's land, so they need to know where the property is. Thank you.
Thank you. How many more citizens are wanting to queue up, just so I kind of get an idea of how our time is going? Okay, so we've got 2 more citizens. I'm not saying, if you didn't raise your hand, you can certainly come up, but I'm trying to gauge the time to make sure everybody gets a chance. So if we could keep comments, reasonably brief so that anybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Ken Bowen. I live at 23407 Northeast 100th Street. I was taught many years ago to never start a presentation with an apology, but today I must. I am sorry to the commissioners because I sent you a lengthy document that I had hoped you would read prior to the meeting. And I sent it also to Mr. Graham. Unfortunately, nobody could open the document, and I apologize for that. The intent was to provide information that I think is relevant. It's lengthy. I don't want to read it But if you're voting tonight, then I feel like I need to speak to some of the issues that I've addressed. And I'd like to move from an apology to a thank you to Mr. Jones and Mr. Graham. As you recall, the last time I was here, I spoke about the traffic survey. The next day, by 1:30, both of those gentlemen had sent me a copy of the traffic survey. So I appreciate that a great deal. I appreciate the mission and the passion that the advocates have provided today. This isn't about mission. This isn't really, it may be a little bit about program. What it is about is use and compatibility, and also compliance with the Land Development Code. I'm a little bit weary because for the last 3 days I've been reading the 273-page Land Development Code several times. So this may be a little disjointed. I'd like to address some of the things that were said this evening to the commissioners. I find the statement that the use of the water use of the monastery would be similar to the proposed use of the St. Mary's Home. I'm not sure I have any expertise. As a matter of fact, I know I don't. But I don't know that the monastery had a vineyard. I don't know that the monastery had an orchard. I don't know that the monastery had livestock. I don't know how many nuns were there. But I do suspect they didn't have any kids. So there is a difference. Now, I don't know how much water the sisters used. I don't really know how much water the home would use. But I would contend that they are not similar uses. And so I think any conclusion that the water issue should be resolved based on that rather than a written document from the Water Board as required by the Land Development Code. That document is what's needed before you all should move forward. Another thing is that has been mentioned is the use is so restricted because we've got an 18-bedroom, 9,400 some odd square foot building. I did happen to talk to the woman that was referred to that was interested in purchasing the house. She had 6 adopted children. She told me that they were brown-skinned children from Guatemala. She told me that the reason she was looking was because the neighborhood she lived in was not kind to those children. She then went on to say that the purpose of her coming up to me, she drove up intentionally, she wanted to ask if I would have problems with 6 brown children living next to her, and she was real concerned about knowing where the boundaries were. So before this woman even put an offer in, she was checking out the neighborhood and she was making sure she knew what the boundaries were. And she was asking that because she was going to fence the property, because she was going to bring in her horses and keep her kids within her property with the fencing. I also talked to a gentleman who was considering buying the property for a wedding venue, which had been mentioned. He had a lot of questions about the boundary. He was real interested in the pond because he thought that would be a nice setting. We told him that's not part of it. I don't know what that gentleman did with any of that information, but to think that the only thing that can go in here is something that has to house 15 people is a misconception. One of the things we've heard is a comparison to Our Lady's Inn in St. Louis. And we've been told that it's a model program out in the country. I would agree with that. It is out in the country. But what's next to it? That's a key consideration when you're looking at making an exception to grant a permit. To the immediate east of Our Lady's Inn is the 7,000-acre August Busch Conservation Area managed by the Department of Conservation. Catty Corner is the August Busch Shooting Range. Directly across the street is a $1.3 million house that is shielded by trees. Can't see across the street. To the immediate west is a street that has homes on maybe 2 to 3 acre lots. Those homes are valued, according to Zillow, between $250,000 and $350,000. 1.5 miles away from that maternity home is a pizza place. That area does not look anything like where we live. No way, no how. It's out in the country, but the zoning, I suspect, is far different. And I don't know what it is, but I can tell you the area is far different. I was interested in the comments about Mother's Refuge. And again, this isn't about mission or passion, but it is about zoning and use. What is the zoning where Mother's Refuge is? If you've got housing and you've got a bus route, which if you ever see a public transportation bus in our neighborhood, you will see a miracle, okay? So there's differences, and it goes back to one of the questions earlier, is why there? Why is it better there than somewhere else? Another thing I would like to mention, and I'm trying to make this brief, but I read a devotion every morning. This morning's devotion was about judgment. And what it told me, or what the bottom line was, on Judgment Day, am I going to be able to look my Lord in the eye and say, "Judge me today, Lord, as I have judged others"? That's a pretty scary thought to me. And one of the things I heard from the opening presentation cast a doubt on those that are opposing it and asserted, in my opinion, that we were judging these women. No, we're not. This isn't about the women at all. Most of us that are opposed to this support what they want to do. It's the place and the use of that place that troubles us. The first speaker also talked about the beauty of the place. The beauty of the place is not only sight, it's the sound. There is no sound. It is so quiet out there. I moved out there because I was sandwiched between I-35, 291, and 152. That's loud. The first time we looked at the house we bought 2 years ago, I was amazed. There was no sound. Today, part of the reason I didn't know you couldn't open the document was because I was working outside, enjoying the beauty of the place and the peace and quiet. There is no sound out there but birds most of the time. So I'd like to address my document a little bit, and I appreciate your indulgence. One of the issues here is the number 15. What is so magic about 15. If you look at the definition of a Class 1 group home, a Class 1 group home, which is what they want, what they claim to be, is one that has between 8 and 15 residents. If you have more than 15 residents, you become a Class 2 group home. What's wrong with a Class 2 group home? One, they can't get a conditional use permit. The Land Development Code strictly prohibits that. So they've got to be a Class 1 group home. We've heard all kinds of numbers as to how many residents are going to be there and how many staff are going to be there and how many visitors are going to be there. Bottom line is that there can't be more than 15 residents at a 24-hour day ever. This is an unregulated entity. Who's going to check? Who's going to count? Who's going to make sure that that's right? And I would submit that any kind of governing body that has to approve a permit, especially a permit that is predicated upon an exception, should view that permit with the utmost scrutiny. And I would also submit that an applicant, a non-governmental applicant that bears the burden of proof, cannot set the terms of the law or the discretion at all. They cannot dictate to anybody how to count that 15. They don't have that right. They can't do it, and they've got the burden of proof, and they shouldn't be able to say, we're going to set the bar this low. That's for you to set. I'd like to talk a little bit about the application itself, because a lot of this feels like somebody ought to be asking, what's the rush? It's important to note that the articles of incorporation for this company were filed and approved on April 26th. Okay? The application was filed on April 30th, 4 days later. Anybody that's done anything knows that 4 days is a short period of time, and if you're trying to do something like create a corporation and then submit documents that support a use, there's a lot that has to be done. And so what I'm about to say isn't meant to be a criticism. It's just meant to be based upon my experience in creating and managing companies, and just ordinary living and common sense. So if you look at the face of the application itself, it says all required items must be submitted with this application, or the application may be rejected. The Land Development Code makes it very clear the word must means must. No exceptions, you gotta do it. I don't know where the authority comes for saying it may be rejected. Well, if you gotta do something and it's not done, where is the authority to say this can go forward? I don't know. Also, it says that the owner's authorization, if applicant is different from the owner, if owner is a corporation, applicant or person signing owner's authorization must be an officer of the corporation and must attach certification of corporate office held to this application. So you've got a 4-day-old corporation. There is no such certification attached to the application. You got to do it. It wasn't done. Why wasn't it done? I don't know. But I don't know of any document or oral statement that says the signer of that application had the authority to do that. Corporations got to have a board of directors. You can't act without them because the board of directors says, these folks can do things for us, and here's what they can do, and here's what they can't do. It's not likely that on April 30th, they had a board of directors. Maybe they did. But if you look at the letter they sent to the Planning and Zoning Committee, it says, and this was dated April 29th, the day before they presented that application. It says that it will not is, it will, or it says it will be, not is, overseen by an executive officer who will, not does, report to a, not the, board of directors. That tells me they didn't have a board of directors the day before. And to get a board of directors together and authorizing and attaching the certificate in one day doesn't appear to have happened. The application does not attach required documents, doesn't. They're not there. The statement from the Water Board that was presented tonight, that was proposed to be added as a condition, that's not good enough because the Land Development Code says it must be a written approval from the water supply district. It says that. It says that the sanitary sewer must be approved in writing. You don't have that. It says the Clay County Highway Department has to provide a certain approval. You don't have that. The site plan itself doesn't seem to comport with what is required in the Land Development Code. If you look at the site plan, one thing that jumps right out to me is that the plan calls for a 4 to 5 acre livestock area. 4 to 5 acres out of 13. If you look at the site plan, that livestock area isn't even close to 4 or 5 acres. So right there, on its face, it doesn't comport. Another thing that is interesting to me is that on April 30th, the day of the application, a warranty deed was executed where the possession of the property was transferred to the applicant. $10. Okay? Not a problem. $10. The application fees were $558.32 and were paid. The question becomes, if you don't have a board of directors, where'd the money come from? Who authorized the payment? Where's the bank account? It takes a while to get a bank account. Where'd the money come from? I have no doubt that it's legitimate, but you don't know. Another problem that I see is that we have no banking or financial records, and with the application, we're now. We don't know where the money's coming from, who's funding it, how much. There is no balance sheet, no cash flow statement, or any financial records. And as a matter of fact, from my reading of certain emails, it's been kind of, don't worry about it. Well, that may be the case, but you got to wonder if you've got an organization that's doing all these things but doesn't have a board of directors or authorized officers, doesn't even have employees. How is it that they can do these things? And if that's the way they do business, what indication do we have that they're going to do business differently? There's no track record. None. They were 4 days old when they applied. 4 days. They're not even 3 months old today. They're not even 2 months old today. We've talked a lot about residency. The thing is that when you look at the qualifications to be a resident, they're all over the place. The Articles of Incorporation, the guiding document, the state approved, this is what we're going to do, says clearly, the purpose is to meet the needs and support single mothers and their newborn babies. Have we heard anything about single mothers? We've also heard about children, not newborns, children. If you look at the open house invitation and the letter that was sent to Planning and Zoning, it says that the admission criteria requires participants to be pregnant women who might otherwise choose to abort their child due to homelessness or lacking familiar support. If you look at attachment F, admission procedures that are attached at page 15 of the report to the Planning and Zoning Committee, it says applicant must be unhoused, under threat of homelessness, or under pressure for an abortion and in need of St. Mary's to support her in her choice to carry the baby to term. So there is no due to statement in that. So you've got single mothers. Well, let's talk about single mothers for a minute, because attachment F also says that St. Mary's will not discriminate against women on the basis of marital status. How can your Articles of Incorporation talk about single mothers and then your admission criteria that's filed here for your circumspection and approval be so different? Compatibility. If you drive out, well, let's just talk about the traffic survey for a minute. The traffic survey is a 3-bar bar chart. Don't know how it was conducted, don't know anything about it. But it shows that in 2010, there were 206 vehicles counted, average daily traffic. 283 vehicles in 2015 and 189 2020. If you just take a number 200, sort of between the first survey and the last survey, and you consider this is an axle counter, most likely. So it's not counting cars, it's counting axles. So one car could be 5 vehicles, okay? They say that 10 to 15 round trips per day initially, which would be 20 to 30 vehicles. And when they're at capacity, they're at 30 to 50. All right? That would mean traffic, as I discussed when I was here before, is going to be increased between 10 and 25%. Another thing I was asked about was the lighting by Commissioner Carpenter, because lighting has to be provided for that parking lot. I've spent the last few nights, once it gets dark, looking to see what I thought, to provide a better answer to you. When you look at the house as it's situated, I can see the upper half of the house from my driveway when there are leaves on the trees. There's a whole tree line between my driveway and that house, two, actually. When the leaves are off the tree, for 5 months of the year, I can see the whole house, the whole back of the house, including the deck. So if I can see them, most likely they can see me. But to the point of lighting, I'm going to see the lights, right? I'm going to see them. I went around again, the neighborhood again. There's one light at the applicant's property, and there's one light. These are private lights. There are no street lights. There's another light at the property on the corner of Cameron and 100th Street. I can't see that light. So the only light I see at night is the one at the monastery. That's part of the beauty of the place. When you look at the adjoining uses, within 1,000 feet of the boundary, to the north, cows. To the north and east, cows. All around, single-family homes. There are no playgrounds, there are no parks, there are no walking trails. I don't know how many kids. I can tell you from the road you can see a trampoline at a house, and you can see a Liberty North Senior Eagle sign. There's one school bus that comes down the road, and it drops one little boy off at the corner, and then somebody who's driving a minivan takes the kid, and they drive north. They don't drive south, they drive north. So away from the adjoining properties. This is not a neighborhood that has kids. It's just not. Could there be kids? You bet. And would we welcome kids? You bet. Because kids in single-family housing doesn't require you all to do anything. They can move in without permission, without this whole process. They're welcome. If there's 15 kids, that's fine.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you've been going on for about a half hour now, and that's way long. I mean, I've tried to give you as much latitude as I possibly could, but there is another citizen waiting to speak.
I appreciate that. And so I'll wind up. And so I would ask you to consider why people choose to and need to live in Ag and R1 zoning. I just ask you to think about that. And why is it that Clay County has chosen to protect those areas? And what is the benefit to Clay County from those areas? I appreciate your time. I'm sorry I went longer than I intended. So
we really, like I said, I've been trying to give as much latitude to citizens as possible.
I appreciate that. I have no problem with that.
Before we go on to the next one, I'm seriously considering ending this at 8 o'clock, whether we are able to come to a decision or not. I'd like to kind of get a sense of this, because if we're going to vote on this, we can't go on past, well, we can't go past 8, but I think it starts to get to the point where we should be considering another meeting, just because the fact that this is going on and on. That doesn't say anything about the validity of any points raised, but, you know, we've set up special meetings for this, and I want to make sure everybody gets heard, but there got to be limits of some sort. Are there any other citizens to speak after this gentleman who's at the podium? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Matt Cundiff, 9915 Cameron. I'll keep this short. I understand everybody has families and wants to eat dinner. What I was going at was, so they're proposing putting in a fence or a gate, but not a fence, all the way around the property. And one of my neighbors mentioned that they've done more improvements than anybody else. I'm kind of, I don't know, my feelings are hurt by that. Because, so if you could zoom in on my house, 9915 Cameron. So I went from driveway to driveway right there. I put in a gate and two gates on the north driveway and the south driveway, and a fence all the way across that frontage. Yeah, I got the next spot too. So with that being said, I have one open spot that's probably 20 foot from the edge of my gate to that fence, or that tree row right there, that I haven't been able to do anything with. With that being said, I've moved in January 1st of last year. There has been 3 people get arrested in my driveway. And one came back later in the day looking for a cell phone in shorts up to here and flip-flops and grass this high. So I think you definitely need to look into security. I mean, it's not the safest place. But with that being said, another thing I'm kind of embarrassed by, I have had to call the police, and thank you, sir. I mean, Clay County's got some of the best sheriffs there are. It did take 20 minutes because we are so far out. 3 police officers showed up, but it was just the timing. I don't know how that works with the ambulance or anything else, but yeah, you are looking at a good 20 minutes to get help. And like I said last time, there's no internet. We still don't have it. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think what I would like to do personally, I'd like to go ahead and stand down for about 5 minutes. I would like to use the restroom, quite honestly. So I can't think of any other way to say that, but just be honest about it. So we're going to stand at ease for 5 minutes, then we will resume. Thank you.
I just want to make sure they got a copy of my letter since I wasn't here. That's all I'm going to say.
We're going to be coming back in here in a couple of minutes, so if there's anybody out in the hallway that wants to come in, please alert them so that if anybody has kind of left the room, let them know we will be coming back in just a few moments.
Yeah. You handed it to me. Where? It was right here. It was right here. It must have been the last meeting. Well, in our copier does color copies. So if that's what could in there, yeah.
Thank you very much for the indulgence and your patience. I believe we had at least one other citizen who is lining up, so it will go ahead and resume taking testimony from those persons who wish to make comment on this on issue. Just to for the recorded record, we are hearing 2021-161 conditional use permit, so we will continue testimony on that line. Please remember to introduce yourselves, speak into the microphone, and try to be brief if possible. Thank you. Please proceed.
My name's Orion again. I just wanted to make sure you guys got a copy of the letter that was presented last time.
May I see that?
I could not make it.
Let's, what we'll do is we will, we'll give that to the clerk. If it has not been received, we will reproduce it and circulate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you bringing that forward. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Bowen. I live at 23407 Northeast 100th Street. And the reason that I came up to speak, I wanted to just talk about 2 points. And you can find this on page 2 of the document that my husband presented to you. And this is regarding the residence of children with mothers. And this is not even necessarily referring directly to the children that will be born eventually. These are children that they may, in fact, bring with them. Missouri case law generally instructs that residency or being a resident entails consideration of facts showing that a person is living at a place as though at home. In this matter, where does the child sleep or use the bathroom? Where are his toys or clothes? Where else does the child spend time, his time, and who does the child live with? When we begin to discuss numbers, and they discuss having 15 women, some of whom may be bringing children that may be 5 years or younger, 5 years or older, every single one of those children is going to be a resident. They live there. They reside there. Their belongings are there. They use the facilities there. They're going to give that address as their home. So that's point one. Point two would be with regard to the zoning commission and the application. And I think that there are things that we as residents in the neighborhood have expressed some concerns about. Some of it has been the speed with which this has happened. The other thing is wanting to have a sense that there are rules and that the rules are being abided by. One of the things that's stated in the zoning rules are that while it is an application, no work is to occur on the property at that time until it's been approved. That's not what they've done. They've replaced a roof. I understand the need to mow the grass and things of that nature. You would do that if you were trying to sell the property. But the point at which they began to actively work on the house as though they had already received your approval, they were in non-compliance, and they should not be allowed to do that. Thank you. Any questions?
Is there any comments or clarification from the commissioners? No. Sir, are you, okay, good. I want to make sure you were in line.
I'm in line. Yes, my name is Richard Dykes. I live at 9725 Cameron Road. And I'll be real brief. I'm just opposed to this whole idea. I think what they're doing is great. But the majority of us here, I think, feel that it needs to be somewhere else. And I hope you guys will really take some time and really think about not just them, but the residents that live out there. We're the taxpayers of this county, and I hope that you'll take a little bit of time and really consider where we're coming from and not rush to run this thing through right away. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other citizens who would like to come forward to speak?
My name is Roger Arnold, and I live at 9815 Cameron Road. And I will be even more brief. We've heard a lot of talk tonight opposing, basically. I do oppose, and off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was said tonight that I don't agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other citizens? Yes, there's one more person who's in line. By the way, are there any other, just so I can kind of manage this thing a little bit better, are there any other persons who would like to come forward and speak on this issue? Okay. If you do change your mind, please line up over by the door so that I get a gauge for wherever it is.
I just have two words I was going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we go for seconds, we want to make sure everybody has firsts.
I just found out.
No. I'm not going to let you cut in line.
Okay, it was just, okay.
You can take your turn. I want to make sure everybody has at least the first shot. Sir?
Presiding Commissioner, my name is Dan Hartman. To the fact of the roof, any one of you, if you had a roof that was leaking, what would you do? You would first bring a professional out, and you'd say, what do we need to do to stop the leaking in the house to destroy the rest of the house so it's not destroyed? At the time we purchased the property, we were aware that the roof could need to be replaced, but I'm not a roofer. So we reached out to a roofer, and he said, yes, you need to replace the roof. If we wanted to replace the roof, the house would have continued to maintain damage and the property values would have gone down. So I just want to simply say that it was not work proceeding. We did not start the work. We immediately had to do something with the roof, and that was addressed. My final comment this evening is every individual human deserves the right to housing. I've heard numerous violations of fair housing. I'm not here to debate that with you this evening, but I want you to educate yourself that every individual that has breath, man, woman, child, does not matter, has the right for housing. Thank you.
I was going to say, if you would have gone on, I would have had to interrupt you. The witnesses will need to address comments to the commission.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Commissioner. I just wanted to say thank you.
Next person, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, and I just, what I was searching for is a fire suppression system, and if you approve this, I think, I really would really worry about not being everybody be get out of the house safely, and or the fire to spread to company homes. If they don't have that, there's simply no water. I've had 2 friends that have had their house burnt to the ground simply because they lived where there weren't fire hydrants, and they couldn't stop the fire. So that's all I wanted to say, because I just had
Thank you.
an old lady moment. I forgot what
Don't worry about it. Thank you very much. I do not see any other persons coming forward to comment. With that, what I'd like to say is we have heard a lot of information, and a lot of it, fortunately, was new. I appreciate, first off, I want to say I appreciate the civility of all persons who came forward to speak. I realize in these issues they can get rather emotional, but I think everybody did a good job of making their cases and making them in a respectful way to others. That said, particularly when it came to the last couple of comments, which I agree with, and that is that we have heard a lot tonight. I think that is undeniable. I think for us to come to a decision tonight is probably ill-advised. What I'm going to be requesting of the commission is that we close testimony, and then that we digest the information that we've been given, and take this up for a vote at a future meeting date, which we will certainly be noticing and announcing. So when I say the record will be closed, we have heard all the information. At some point, we've got to say, okay, now we've got the information, so we will go forward. Mr. Counselor, does that require a vote or consensus?
I think it probably would require a vote to push this off from tonight, yes.
Now, did I explain that adequately? Is there anything you'd care to add as far as legalities of it?
No, I think that's fine. I think I would suggest also that if any commissioner maybe has a request for additional information, you could email it to Mr. Jones or myself. We would endeavor to come up with what we can.
And I would, oh, go ahead and say that again, would you please? I don't think you were quite in the microphone.
Oh. Is this not working? Can you hear me? Well, all I said was that I think if any commissioner would like more information from either Mr. Jones or myself, they certainly could email us, and we would try and get that information to them.
With that said, I would also emphasize that we would be voting to close the records, we are going to be looking at information we have in our possession. And so any information that we would get from yourself or from Mr. Jones would be information that is already in part, or it would be obviously in your case, legal counsel.
Sure.
So that being said, I'd like to make a motion that I don't know if I want to table it. Is that a good way to put it, Kevin?
I think probably the motion could be to table it to a date certain, or to move to place this on. It'd be better probably to go ahead and put it on an agenda date so that everybody here is clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
So just a motion to, continue this matter to whatever date you choose.
Okay. So as far as a date goes, we're going to be out for 2 weeks because of the holiday. We have a July 18th.
The 8th or the 14th?
You have a work session on the 8th, excuse me, and you have the next business session on the 14th.
Which I think probably we need to be doing, I don't know if it's required, but certainly it's been our practice to make these votes on the 14th.
Yeah.
So I'll make the motion that we close the record 2021-116, and that we take it up on the regular agenda for Wednesday, July 14th meeting. Does that pretty much complete the?
6
motion?
p.m.
At 6 p.m. Very good. With that said, that's the motion. Discussion, Commissioner Carpenter?
I support the motion.
Do you have any comments before we go to a vote? Commissioner Thompson,
No, Commissioner, thank you.
please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson
Yes?
and Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to be able not to make a decision for everybody tonight. I know everybody's anxious for that, but obviously this information requires more contemplation. With that, that completes our regular agenda. That brings us to comments on non-agenda items. Are there any comments from the public on any non-agenda items? That would be an item not covered on tonight's agenda. Seeing none. Are there any office holder comments? Seeing none. Are there any agency comments? There are none. Comments from the county administrator?
None.
Comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
And I likewise have no comments to make at this moment. We have approval of the agenda of minutes of previous sessions. There are two on our agenda, June 3, 2021 at 9 a.m. meeting and June 9, 2021, 6 p.m. meeting. We can take those up either individually or as a group. I would entertain a motion on approval of minutes of previous sessions.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 3rd, 9 a.m. meeting and the June 9th, 6 p.m. meeting. Minutes as printed.
Motion's been made for the approval of minutes of previous sessions. That would be June 3, 2021, 9 a.m., June 9, 2021, 6 p.m. Discussion, Commissioner Carpenter?
No, thank you.
You're free to close. Please,
I close.
please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
That brings us to written reports. Are there any written reports to be discussed?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have the annual
Go
report.
ahead and speak into the, are you on?
I've got it, yeah.
Can't quite hear you.
Okay, it's better. We have the 2020 annual report from the Clay County Senior Services, and I'm going to pass these out. We received them this afternoon, so.
Thank you very much. Are there any other written reports to be submitted from the, from staff? Thank you. Seeing none, we do not have any executive sessions on for tonight's meeting. That brings us to adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.